Good evening, everyone. Hello. Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education workshop meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 7th. The time is now 6:02 p.m. You could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So with me this evening, we have Ashley Williams, Janine Randolph, Kara Bakey, Colin Hostin, Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig, Sherry McCready Pritchard, we are waiting for one more virtually, Howard White, but we will continue. I have Dr. Estrella and her full cabinet is here this evening. Thank you for being here. At the moment, I'd like a motion to add an executive session to the beginning of the agenda for the purpose of discussing a confidential communication from counsel that is subject to attorney-client privilege. Motion by Kara, seconded by Mary Ellen. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Now I need another motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing a confidential communication from counsel that is subject to attorney-client privilege and invite Dr. Estrella, Superintendent of Schools, Lunda Aswani, Chief Financial Officer, Louis Bray, Executive Director of HR, and legal counsel into the executive session. Also adding Sandra Felix. Motion by Janine Randolph, seconded by Mary Ellen. All in favor, please say aye, raise your hand. Thank you, and we will be back shortly. Thank you.
In the meantime, Mr. Pennington will be working with the SGCs on some pieces of each school's individual data.
All right, good evening, everyone. We have three portions of tonight's program. One of those sessions is going to be an update from Finance, Linda Asmani. One portion will be a panorama survey presentation by Diane Filardo, really looking at the district as a whole, and you'll have an opportunity to look at your school data to jump on and look and see some of the successes from the panorama survey that was given this year. And then the third part is really this session tied to our SGCs. So as an SGC, we meet 3 times a year. The first meeting is for new members, and that happens in November. The second meeting is a full SGC meeting in January, and that's broken up into 2 nights, one for elementary schools, one for secondary schools. And then this is our end of the year celebration where we reflect on the year, think about what went well, think about some of the challenges we had, and highlight those successes and start to think about next year. Start to think about what are some of our goals, what are going to be our priorities for next year. So that's where we're going to start tonight. We're going to start with this SGC celebration. We'll spend some time, we'll think about these different components, and then we'll transition to a presentation by Finance and Diane. So our objectives, I kind of went through them: identify successes and challenges, identify your number one priority, and then share results with other members. So our high schools and middle schools are near each other, elementary schools, so we're going to have an opportunity to talk about some of the successes we've had, some of the challenges that we've had, and go through there. So the first piece, I think, just revisiting SGCs, some of the key roles and functions that we talk about, analyzing student data. You'll have a chance tonight to look at Panorama, which is one set of data. NWEA is another set of data that the SGC can look at. Another piece is reviewing fiscal obligations and looking at the budget as an SGC, which is part of the reason why we have the finance team that comes and shares updates. We really want to keep our SGCs informed. But right now, schools are actually going through their school-based budgets, and by, I think, sometime next week, that will be completed. But principals, assistant principals have come, they meet with members of finance team, members of the MLL team, the specialized learning team, the grants team, you name it. It's this full system where they come and they talk about all of their goals, all their needs, and they get to a place where they balance their budget. And so part of the SGC is to have conversations around some of those goals and some of those ideas. Also, we look and they provide advice and assistance to the principal. And I think the other piece that's important is really looking at how are we involving parents. I think a parent involvement policy is part of an SGC, and how are we doing things to bring our families in. So just some of the roles and responsibilities to help ground when we think about successes, when we think about challenges. All right, so I think we're going to start. At your table, you have a chart, and it says successes, it says challenges, and so why don't we take 5 minutes, start to jot down some ideas, think about your SGC as co-chairs, what are things that you've done this year as an SGC, and then we'll pull it up into an idea. We'll take 5 minutes where you can have a conversation as co-chair team.
It is. And I didn't like, but I'm just wondering how many other people are in that position. And I was just thinking I could just show up, I could just look at it. That's the one someone coming and then they turn away. Right. I guess I can. That's the crazy. I think it's yeah. She just said we're at 42 tickets and she didn't but I was thinking we're at 42, whatever it was. So if this is a 42 that are or social don't read it. I couldn't even guess the opposite. I never noticed. How about I just reply to them? So I replied to Sophia and I said, she went there. Thursday. Well, I was just thinking. Right. Well, we need some sort of urgency list of that happen, right? Yeah. Not refund, yes. That was more than a couple of details. I bet that's what happened. I just want to make sure we're doing it walking to the first one. I think she's fucking something. I probably figured that out. I think she was next. What I said, authorize it.
Right. We're just gonna go. Tell their friends. They weren't. Oh, wow. Fine, I guess they have a little bit sick, but
I don't even know what they have. Five.
Somebody else.
I think they've got already.
Right, the ones are in the tented. Over there.
I can see.
I was trying to make sure. Yeah, I think that's. I think they did have this like second.
Answer is I guess we could set.
Ballot option. One person nobody has bid, is that it?
I sent my baby, I sent my. And I did find that.
All right, so hopefully you've had a good opportunity to talk with your co-chair. I am going to ask one member of your SGC to scan the QR code and put in 1 to 3 words. What was your most notable success? If you can't scan the QR code, you can go to menti.com and put in the 8-digit code 4786-3484. 1 to 3 words, your most notable success from this year.
Get out. I mean, people literally say that's it.
I guess time to plan.
So it's really interesting as we look, there's a wide range of successes, and honestly, that's the way it should be because every school has different things that come up. So if I were to look, I see things like parking lot. Parking lot must have been a big issue at a school, and the SGC took this on and discussed it and talked about it, and really, it's a success because I think it's the school that it is. They've been doing some good work. I see chronic absentee rate, mission aligned decisions, finances, communication, MYP. So I know that we had a school that went through accreditation, so that's something that's highlighted. So it really is great to see the study tours. to see this wide range of successes from this year. I know that every year, ebbs and flows, different things come up. I see exchange students, events, consistent meetings, joint PTA conversations. So it's a wide range of successes. So you had an opportunity to talk with your fellow co-chair. And I don't want to take too much time, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk with at least 2 other SGCs. I know our high schools are right near each other. It gives them an opportunity to talk because we have 4 high schools. Our middle schools are somewhat near each other. They're just across the way. And then we have a lot of elementary schools that can connect. And when we do that, we'll focus on some of the successes, some of the challenges, and what you're looking to do next year. And then we will wrap up by looking at what's going to be your top priority for next year. And I know that you've already had that conversation, so it'll give you an opportunity to get up, maybe talk to a couple SGCs. We're going to take about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back and see what is going to be your top priority for next year as you look to set the stage, because this is our celebration, but just like we do at school, we're constantly looking at, okay, what are we going to focus on as we go to next year? And some people, they already have that. It's like, yes, we're going to focus on this because we're in the middle of construction, or they're in the middle of something else. And so it's important that priorities adjust based on school. But I want you to have that opportunity to talk with other schools to hear some of their successes, some of their challenges, and what they're looking to do, because it gives you an opportunity to hear from other schools. So we'll say 5 minutes, you can get up and move around, you can talk, or you can just shift your chairs, and you can just share some of your successes and some of the challenges.
So Jim, you're saying our challenge is like trouble. Yeah. Right. Yeah. We talked about that being our challenge. We could be high, space. And our liaison, you had a liaison, she's bringing it back, and it's still gets confusing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's better. Present it to them. Yeah, it was great. What we're trying to go on now. But. surprises you when this size is over. We do the town show in Atlanta. Big sales. Land event, right? Right. Now they're hoping it's still nice, like, let's land out and ride. It would be nicer by
I'll either put it on. Two loaves of bread. So literally, I already ate the whole lunch I packed. I didn't know there was food coming. And then I was like, oh, bread, half of it. Chunk of bread covered in butter. It was
I was gonna say, I hope you had some butter.
It was so good. At work, we had some teacher appreciation stuff. We had a parent make homemade bread. Unreal. Just had like a big chunk of bread.
Preservatives.
We're gonna say one more minute, and then we're gonna bring it back to our top priority.
Concentrate on.
Not for me so much.
I was able to enjoy the whole thing.
All right, so hopefully you had a good conversation talking about some of the successes and challenges of the year. And as we close out this section of the program, I would love for a member of your SGC to put in what is going to be your number one priority for next year. You don't have to have everyone do it, just have one person do it. You can scan the code, the QR code. You can go to menti.com and put in the 8-digit code. So, what is going to be your number one priority for next year?
Yeah, I think
Michael Boyd is a 95 on most days from where he works, but it's the biggest thing. Oh,
No, no, go ahead. People are sensible to one right now, right? If we do a more casual.
$75% of the staff live in Norwalk.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Those are my
a couple of us have law schools are now off.
yeah.
So I'm like,
All right, so some of the priorities, I love to see this, are IB authorization, school compact, family involvement, IBPYP authorization, I know what school that is, advocacy for facilities, board policy, school compact, unified cell phone policy, core building, budget, family involvement. So there's a lot of good plans as priorities for next year. I think that that is a good place for the principal and the SGC co-chair to really start to think about the meetings for next year and how are we looking at some of those components to build. And thank you as SGCs for the work you do. It's important. Having an SGC at a school really does help build some of this staff, parent involvement, and really supporting the principal in the work that's happening. So thank you. With that, I'm going to transition. We're going to go to our panorama survey, and Diane Filardo, she is our data guru. And so, welcome, Diane.
Before Diane goes on. Close out our executive session. We are back. So now we will have Diane Filardo. We're changing the agenda a little bit. We're flipping the budget update with the panorama survey review. That's what we'll be doing next.
So before Diane begins, first and foremost, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our yearly SGC Board of Education meeting. I wanted to take a moment to thank all the school leaders, as well as all the parents and other guests that are here this evening for this conversation. I know our principals have had a long day, so thank you for being here and pushing through. I wanted to also give a special thank you for many of the SGCs that we had an opportunity to already meet. Your conversations have been really valuable and provided some meaningful insight for us in terms of the work that we need to do as we continue to develop the work for the district and most importantly for our scholars. Our conversations will continue to happen throughout the course of next year. We didn't get to see all of the SGCs, but our hope is that by next year we will complete a full cycle of having conversations with all of our schools' SGCs, and using that information not only to improve the work that's happening in your individual schools, but also to support the bigger picture and understanding what are some key pillars that elevate from those conversations that we need to keep in mind as we plan forward. As you will hear today, there's two elements. I know you already started some of the conversations around outlining some of the things that you are, think we should prioritize based on what you've learned from your work. But you also learned from the panorama survey that we have some really good and exciting data of how we have improved as a district. And then we want to bring the budget process full circle. We've had an opportunity to speak to you when we were going through the biggest elements of the budget process, which is the advocacy component, when we were advocating to the city for resources and funds. And the team and I were talking about the importance of coming full circle and letting you know where we are at this point in time in the year and what the work looks like once the budget is approved, or we know where we stand through the budget process, when the city gives us a final percentage, right? And the work that happens with our school leaders and schools to balance the budget. So Mr. Aswani, after Diane Pilato presents on the panorama survey, will speak to you in terms of where we are in the process, the work that still remains to happen, and kind of give you some inside scoop of the process when they're engaging with school leaders and their teams around the work that happen to balance budgets across the district. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dan.
Dr. Estrella, Board of Education, school leaders, and SCGs. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about our recent panorama survey. And this survey actually provides feedback for us.
Excuse me, Diane.
Oh, absolutely. That's okay. So the panorama survey provides us with feedback on students, staff, and families' perception of the school environment and also the social, emotional learning skills of our students. So tonight we're going to talk about some of the topics that were covered by the survey. We're going to review the positive response rates both overall and by selected subgroups. And we're going to examine trends through 2024. So for students, there are two surveys. There's an SEL survey, and it's the two topics, growth mindset and emotional regulation. And then there's a school survey, and the school survey really is a culture and climate survey, and you can see there is different. Now, these surveys are given to students, one set of surveys for grades 3 through 5, and another set 6 through 12. The topics of those surveys are identical. The same topics are covered, but they're age-appropriate surveys. So teachers and staff, they have 6 topics, and these are anonymous surveys. That last one you might not be able to see is faculty growth mindset. And families, there are 4 topics. And the last topic, school and district communication, is a set of questions that were developed internally so that we have feedback on how our communication from the district and from the schools, what our parents, our families' perception are on communication. Now we see participation rates by students, staff, and families, and Panorama sets a target. I mean, Panorama surveys are given in over 1,500 school districts across the U.S. So they give us a target, they set targets, and you can see where we were this year in terms of targets. I've got to say, these participation when it comes to students, staff, and families are across grades 3 through 12. If you look at participation at the elementary level, that is where we have highest participation for all three stakeholders. Before we look at results, let's just take a look at the design of the survey. To illustrate the design, this is a question from the School and Culture and Climate Survey for grades 6 through 12. It's a sample question under the topic of school belonging. So you can see the questions are all positively framed. There's an anchor point, and everything is framed as a question rather than a statement. And you see those two check marks? We're talking about measuring the percent of positive responses. To be a positive response, you have to be in the two. You have to select one of the two highest options. So individual questions are part of a larger topic. The topic could have probably a minimum of 5 questions, sometimes up to 10 or 12 questions. So we talk a lot about SEL, but this is the CASEL framework where you can see in the circle the orange, the green, and the yellow, the skills that students need for academic success, for health and wellness, and for civic engagement. And there is the CASEL definition of SEL: manage emotions, set and achieve goals, establish positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So we're going to look at SEL trends. Again, the two topics of growth mindset and emotional regulation, and we measure it by percent favorable. And we're looking over a period of 3 years, 2022 through 2024, and for growth mindset, 2 sets of stack graphs, one for grades 3 through 5, one for grades 6 through 12. And see that for growth mindset at both grade levels, there was a 3-point increase between 2022 and 2023. And for emotional regulation, there was a 1-point increase at elementary, and at the secondary level, there was a 3-point increase, all compared to 2022. Now we're going to take a closer look at emotional regulation, a sense of the type of questions. So we saw from the graph for 2023, percent positive was 46%. You see the number of respondents, a little over 2,000, and this is the set of 5 questions. And I don't know, we're able to see clearly? I just want you a minute to read that. So you see the percent favorable by question, and then to the right of the column, you see whether the percent increased in comparison to 2023 or decreased. So for all but one question, there was an increase. The bottom one says, the last question is, when things go wrong for you, how calm are you able to stay? Now, we also look at subgroup results. So this is the demographics of our major ethnic groups that took the survey. And again, I'll go through the results since you might not be able to see all the way down, but we're comparing the 2023% positive to 2024. And for Hispanic, in 2023, 44% favorable response, now in 2024, 45%. For white students, 47% in 2023, 53% in 2024. Again, percent favorable. The last 2 choices when we looked at the structure of that question. Similarly, we're looking at I can't seem to advance this now. So now this is similar for grades 6 through 12, but you notice there's one more question added here, and I'll read that to you, and that's the top question. When are you feeling pressured? When you're feeling pressured, how easily can you stay in control? So that's an additional question that was added for the grade 6 through 12 group. And here again, you see increases right across each question, particularly the question of once you get upset, how often can you get yourself to relax? You see it went up 5 percentage points in 2023. And you see the respondents by race, ethnicity, and here, right across our major, you see a positive increase in the percent favorable. Any questions? So now this is another topic, rigorous expectations, and this is from the school survey, the perceptions of schools, culture, and climate. You see the questions, and you notice that at grades 3 through 5, we have several questions that exceeded 80% favorable. You see the results now broken down by grade. And we're looking at percent favorable for our free and reduced lunch students, 2023 to 2024, a gain of 3 points. Our MLL students, 2023 to 2024, a 3-point increase. Same topic, grades 6 through 8. Here you do see that the overall positive percent is lower, but either for individual questions, the change when you compare to 2023, for the first 2 questions, the percentage remained the same, and there were increases for the other 3. Now you see results by grade, and this pattern was very similar to what we saw in 2023. You see percent favorable again for free and reduced lunch, slight uptick, and for multilingual learners, there was a decline of 1%. Now, this is a different display of data. This is a heat map, and it helps you visualize the difference between the overall results that you see in black, although the actual numbers are in white with that black background, and looking at specific groups of students. How did their results, how positive was it or how negative in terms of above the overall results? That would be anything that's highlighted in green. The darker green, the more positive the difference. And then on the flip side of that, when you're seeing any cells that are in orange, you're seeing a group result percent positive that is lower than the overall results. And the darker the shade of orange, the larger that difference is. So we're looking at 6 different topics, and that's all the topics that make up the school survey, the school of culture and climate survey. And we're looking at the first display is for grades 3 through 5, and then 6 through 12. And we're comparing 2024 overall results and also to 2023, and also by race, ethnicity subgroups. So I'll give you an example. If you look under grades 6 through 12, school rigorous expectation, the overall results was 57% positive. Our Black students, there was 622 of them, their response was actually 1 point higher, 68%. Our Hispanic students was 1 point lower for that. So they were at 56%. So you can compare within the grade, within the survey, and then within the 2 years. Again, it just shows visualizes the difference. Any questions about this heat map? Yes. Now, the survey is given to everyone, students, families, and staff all have the option to take it in English, Spanish, or Haitian Creole.
Asking if you see a plus or minus for 2 years, it should be added up as in, like, say, for instance, the climate change program students, 2023 to 2024, should be looked at as 8% drop over 2 years.
Not necessarily, you should always be comparing it to the overall, okay? It's not cumulative.
So just a follow-up question on the ability to take it in a different language. What percentage of those who took the survey did it in a non-English language?
I have those stats. I don't. Just I can see if I can find it.
It's great that it's available. I'm just curious if the acceptance and the use of it uses the
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? So we're going to take a look at another app. It's a much simpler one. You know, for the past 2 years, we've been giving Panorama data on students that are chronically absent. I mean, we know the effect on academics for chronically absent students, and it's no surprise that it does impact school culture and climate. So we're looking at grades 3 through 5 again, 6 through 12 across all the topics for school culture and climate. And you see overall results on the first line. And then you see the heat map, the visualization of, for students who are not chronically absent, what is the difference between the overall and the non-chronically absent students. And you can see that the shading is very light. You look at chronically absent, you see particularly school rigorous engagement in grades 6 through 12. Overall results was 57%, but the results for chronically absent secondary students, 50%. So this just gives you a sense. This is no surprise to us. We saw very similar results when we did this last year. And when we talk about chronically absent, we're talking about chronically absent based on the first day of school through the end of February. And this survey is given in March. Any questions? Again, now we're looking at our MLL students and their perception of school culture and climate. You see all the topics to the right. And if you notice, you see dark green for some areas. Actually, quite a few areas do have green for yes. 17% of our students who took the survey in grades 6 through 12 were multilingual learners, and they had higher perception in school belonging, school climate, school engagement, and teacher-student relationships. Now, for grades 3 through 5, MLL students had a lower perception of rigorous expectations and school safety, but had a higher perception of school engagement. And the percent of MLL, of students who were MLL who took the survey in grades 3 through 5 was 27%. Now we're looking students that are under special education. Again, the same topics. 6 through 12, students had a higher perception of school belonging, but a lower perception of rigorous expectation. And the students 6 through 12 who were under special ed was about 13% of all students that took the survey. 15% at grades 3 through 5, where they had a lower perception of belonging, rigorous expectation, and school safety. Now we're switching to look at a topic under the staff survey. And by staff, we surveyed certified teachers and staff within the school that service students. So we had a large gain in staff leadership relations. It rose up to 71%. And we see the questions that were asked. And a couple of them I think I might have to read to you. When you face challenges at work, how supportive are your school leaders? So that was a 69% positive response. It was up 5 points from 2023. Another area, how respectful are your school leaders towards you? 83% and 4 percentage points higher than last year. So, this is a graph of staff leadership relations, percent positive, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Now, we actually gave some of these topics. The first time we gave a panorama survey was in 2020. The past 3 years, we've had the same topics. But this is one topic that was on the 2020 survey, and at that time, the percent positive was 60%. So we went from 60% in 2020 up to 71% in 2024. Now, family responses in school climate. And there are, that last question, the second column, overall, how much respect do you think the teachers at your child's school have for the children? 87% positive response, and that was up 3 percentage points from 2023. Again, the trend over time for this, went from 73% in 2022, now we're up to 80%. There are a few topics that are in each stakeholder survey. And those 2 topics are school climate and school safety. So what you have in this slide, you see the family responses, the students grades 3 through 5, students grades 6 through 12, and teachers and staff. And you see for school climate, families have a more positive perception of school climate than staff and students. And for school safety, teachers and staff's perception of school safety was more positive than families and students. So we're seeing a lot of positive trends here. There are 26 different topics, and there were increases in favorable percent in 22 out of the 26. And one topic that we added 3 years ago to the survey is school communication. And that happens to have the highest positive percentage overall, which is 82%. And that percentage increased from 80% in 2023. So now that we've gotten a flavor of district results, I think you're going to have the opportunity to take a look at your, no, not yet. Oh, okay. Well, it would be interesting for you to take a look at school level results. Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you for your time.
So just to add to that piece, each school has their own, this was a 30,000 foot view of the data across all schools, but each school has their own specific data, and it's a good opportunity at an SGC meeting to dive into some of this data to see how do those trends match up with district trends. Are there areas that can be used to create some SGC goals as you're working through the year? But it's a survey that we give every year in March, and it's great to see. I just want to say how great it is to see this positive trajectory. So as we look over the last couple of years, each year we're seeing incremental growth. So that's a compliment to the school leaders and the work that they're doing on a daily basis in the building. So thank you, Diane, for presenting. All right. Our next portion is going to be the finance team, Luda Asmani. So, Luda, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have an ambitious expectation of getting home and mow before it gets dark, so I promise I won't be here long. But I did want to spend some time and give you an update on the budget and where we are. As I've shared with you in the past, that we have a cyclical process in the budget. We begin with a pro forma budget, we get to a tentative approved budget, which the Board of Ed approved 8.2%. It went through the city process. As you know, we were appropriated 3% of the budget, and actually last night at the Board of Estimates and Taxation, the final city budget was approved, and the 3% is the final number. So we know, and the tax rate have been set. So last night officially concluded the city budget process, and so now we're in this process of reconciling our 8.2% to the 3%. As part of the SPB process, the student-based budget, we engage with the school leadership to walk them through the budget process to kind of get their input. And so once I signal to Mr. Ralph, he will click a video just to kind of give you a snapshot. I will apologize in advance to Casey, Carla, and Christina, because I use their videos without their permission, but I did want you to just get a flavor of the process that's involved in putting together the budget. This is really important. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we provide allocation for students. There is some of my narration in the background. It's about 7 minutes, so please bear with us. But I thought it would be important for this group and others to just kind of get an insight into this process. The finance team, together with all of our other support staff that support the principals in putting the budgets together, we jump on multiple calls with all of the 21 schools. We have a number of pre-meetings before what you see as the final meeting, which is usually not final because we have to go back and clear off. But I did want to give you a sense of the process. So please, there's about a short 7-minute video.
There are many steps to building our Board of Ed budget. One of the most critical phases is the school-based budget. Each school is given a budget based on its enrollment. We hold several meetings with each school to build each budget. Each school looks at its staff roster to determine that the appropriate number of teachers and staff are assigned to the school.
That, Daniela, those changes that Kristen just made with the red, those are what they're currently in. That's not even, because by June 1st, I think the movement for next year contractually has to happen. We're considering a couple of moves, but this is what they currently live in right now.
Okay,
So
so if any movement happens that's different than this spreadsheet, just keep us
I will.
updated
Okay.
so that we can, thank you.
And then one of the things we talked about yesterday is as the program is expanding, the recommendation is that these classrooms are supposed to have assistants, all of them, including the lower elementary. And so that would be an addition of 2 Montessori trained paras. At a minimum, I absolutely need 1 because we also run into the problem when any one of our Montessori teachers are absent or paras are absent, we need trained individuals that know the program and know how to support students throughout the day. And it really can't just be anyone. So it becomes very problematic for us not to have any excess people to be able to support this particular program. And what I mentioned yesterday was, I'm not sure if it's possible when you're thinking about the 30-something preschoolers that we don't have funding for, if possibly like money from that could be allocated towards 2 Montessori.
Schools receive a per pupil amount for each student. Because students who receive specialized services require additional supports, schools receive added funding to provide these services. The same is true for students who are learning English.
And for the Fox Run folks, what the team has done is taken a close look at the caseload audit to determine the number of individuals who are anticipated by grade for the coming year. What we've done is we've taken a look at total projected per grade with an IEP. We've then looked at the number of individuals who are speech only. You'll see that as speech only or SLI. Speech language impaired only. These are individuals who don't receive direct contact from a special ed teacher. They're only supported and case managed by the speech pathologist. So we're removing those numbers when we're counting resource. We then also take from the total the number of individuals who are in an ICT classroom. And so when we land at where you see the number of evaluations that are due next year, for those of you that don't know, we're hitting the 3-year mark on the big evaluation year following COVID. So when we hit that 3-year mark, it increases the number of evals. So it's a big demand on the case manager. So between the total resource hours, the number of evaluations, it's looking like the 3.
Okay. Hi, Taylor. Hi, good morning, everyone. All right, so Tracy, we have 147 MLLs. We've had 14 MLL increase this year. We currently do not have updated Lost Links data from the 2024 Lost Links. Hopefully all of that information will be in soon so you can start to make decisions for classroom placements for next year. We have 3 MLL teachers, 1 bilingual aide. We did not recommend any change in staffing. If you are interested in a dual language program for the future, we would help you hire for a bilingual general ed teacher to make that program happen.
And you had received an MLL funding allocation of $357,751.
The school-based budget process ensures that the correct classes are being offered and that these classes have the appropriate number of students.
If it's 36, let's just say, or more, could be more or less, depending on what the answer is.
It's 107 in total. So if we did that,
Right.
we're talking about another million. So I'm not
That's what
asking for that. Where's my negotiator, Linda? We can negotiate. Somebody else can keep 500,000.
Karma's always wheeling and dealing.
I lose sleep over this. I'm sure you all do too.
Yep.
All right, you want to go through?
So I
and
guess
through?
it depends on that answer.
There are other services that are also built into a school's budget, like instructional supplies, professional development, and other services.
2 years and GL's, thank you, Joe. The most recent and then last year's GL, I just did an average of, the only thing I lowballed, and which I typically always lowball, unfortunately, is the subline. Other than that,
You have high hopes.
yeah, I have high hopes that we're gonna retain our people to come to work every day.
The ESS subline or the other sublines?
My subline of 330, what is that, the ESS?
Yep.
Yeah.
If you go back to the 128, right? You've
Yeah.
only spent $812, and so I'm my run rate saying you're gonna spend about $1,200 for the year.
Then
And
go
then
ahead,
the-
go with Joe's run rate for that, because the sub is. We
Right,
don't
and-
use the non-cert anymore because I don't have them.
Right. So
I
then
used to have 7 to use, now I have 2. So that's why it's all coming out of that ESS.
There are always adjustments made to school-based budget. Each year, the number of students or other unique impacts have to be taken into account.
Physically isn't big enough for the numbers that we have, so I think it's going to be challenging because I've got like 30 intra-district forms sitting in my inbox, but I think that we can start to keep these numbers down for the future.
Well, and I think it's being strategic around at what point are we, accepting the transfer requests based on the numbers?
And it depends on the grade too.
Well, like I have a lot right now who are current first graders who want to
Right.
come in and
I
they
was-
would just be no's.
Yep.
Right.
You just wouldn't have.
The school-based budget model also promotes transparency and ensures equitable funding for all of our schools.
Thank you, Ralph. So while Ralph transitions back to the PowerPoint, so we have 21 schools in the district. Each one of these meetings takes about 3 hours. And so we spend the final meeting, 3 hours worth times 21 number of schools. And we have a number of pre-meetings before the final meetings. I think there was a count earlier. I'm trying to remember, Allison mentioned she had 8 pre-meetings working with a particular school. So it's an intensive process, and I thought it would be important for you to understand the phases and steps that go into the budget. Again, we're talking here about 70% of the budget is in the schools. And so every time we're challenged, when we ask for 8.2% and we get 3%, coming up with that difference, as you can see, many of the principals working with the support staff, trying to answer those questions. How do we provide the service? How do we meet the goals? How do we meet mandated class sizes? Things extremely complicated, but obviously the principals work with the SECs to kind of get a priority of the school, and so that is helpful, but I wanted to give that insight. I do want to thank Nick, our Director of Marketing and Communications, for helping with many of the work and education and communications, including our budget book, including the video that you just saw. I do have members of the budget team in the back, Kristen, Nina, Tori's there, Joe could not make it, but he's part of the budget team. But when we meet with these schools, it's not just finance, it's members of the curriculum team, it's members of the MLL team, it's members of the grant team, it's members, all of the supports that come, transportation, school lunch program, food services, all of these individuals that are critical to the school's budget are part of the session, but I thought that that was important to share with you, but we do have a website with a lot more. I had shared with you some key dates. As I mentioned, Monday, May 6th was yesterday. The final budget was approved, and so now we're working on reconciling that budget. Before that, we also had a capital budget that's already been approved, and I'll share that with you. You have the handouts. I'm not going to go through the individual projects, but as far as where are we now with the budget, the operating budget for the schools, as I mentioned, we had approved, the board had approved a budget of just over $245 million. This is the summary of the budget. But in sharing this budget with the city during the budget process, we have broken it down in what the drivers are. And this is how we got to that 8.2 request. So now you can see it's extremely challenging when we have to figure out where along this list do we shave to that 3% that is mandated. So this is kind of a summary. This is kind of what we're working on now. So you see that the FY24 approved budget, the year that we're in, was just about 226. We asked for 245, which is at 8.2. And now we have to do a series of adjustments to get it to that 233%. So last year when I shared this chart, we were lucky that we were informed. We had received some additional grants, some carryovers, which allowed us to make the difference. As of now, we're still trying to figure out what the number is, so we don't know. We did make a lot of adjustments. We are going to carry over about $2 million from prior years that we hadn't used. We had already built that in to balance the budget. Based on trends this year, we feel like we can add another $500,000 to that, so that kind of helps get us there. But that still leaves us with about an $11.2 million gap between what was asked, 8.2%, and the 3%. And that's what we're going to be working together over the next couple of days, is trying to figure out how do we make up that difference. One of the things that helps us to get there in the past has been health insurance. You'll recall that as I began the budget process, well, as you know, recently one of our unions left the state plan and moved to a high deductible health plan, the Cigna plan. So we currently have two different plans that our employees belong to. So typically we begin with assuming like a worst case scenario, and as we go through the budget and we get some final numbers, it gives us an opportunity to kind of shave off that request. So when I presented to you this chart at the beginning of the budget process, the state partnership plan 2.0, which is the plan that the city is also on, initially when they gave us their initial projection for increase, it was 7%. It was revised to 5%. We just received the numbers, it's at 2%. So that's favorable. And fortunately, we don't have the majority of our employees now, since transitioning, are out of the state plan. The Cigna plan, which is the plan that our teachers transitioned to, is the high deductible plan. At the beginning of the year, when we started the budget process, they did not have enough information to give us a rate. When the contract was set, there was a 15% not to exceed amount, which is the amount that we had plugged into the budget, hoping that that number would come down, which typically happens. We did receive word that that plan did not come down, and our renewal rates are at 15% for those that are on the state plan. So together with the premium cost share, for the top plan, our employees are going to see about a 2% increase in their insurance plan for those that are on the state plan. For those that are on the teacher plan, the new plan that transitioned, they are going to see about a 17% increase in their rates. Part of that is a 15% premium increase, and then there's also a premium cost share part of that. And so the savings that we saw last year from transition to health insurance are basically being wiped out this year. And unfortunately, it does not give us the leverage to reduce, finding additional reductions. So whereas this was an area we were hoping to find some savings, we're not. So as you know, we're 85% staff driven, we're a people organization. This is a chart I had shared before. It kind of shows where our staff live and work. You can see that 85% of our staff are either in elementary, high school, and middle school. If you throw in facilities, transportation, there's been a lot of transportation conversations, food services, you have almost 80% of our employees are in those areas that are directly serving students. So it does not give us a lot of room in terms of making adjustments that would not directly impact students. But again, that's our goal, and we're going to try and see how we could do that. But that's really where we are in terms of the budget, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this point related to the budget. Our goal is we're finishing up the SBB, the school meetings this week. We have a board meeting we have a finance committee meeting tomorrow where we'll provide additional updates. The board is meeting on May 21st, I believe. We'll give more updates then, and then June 4th is when the Board of Ed is scheduled to approve the final budget. And hopefully between now and the next 4 weeks, we'll figure things out. That's where we are, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you. I can go home.
Mary Ellen.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. I know it was a very, very long day for everybody. But please be self-assured that we are listening. Thank you for taking the time and meeting with Dr. Stray and her team. You know, when they have the SGC meetings. I know that sometimes it feels like you're not being heard. All the information does come across our desk and we discuss it all. Thank you. I'm going to give the microphone out to Sandra Felix, so in case she has any closing statements.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming and good night. But we need a motion, so the rest of you guys will be released very soon.
Okay, motion by Mary Ellen, seconded by Ashley. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.